You see the headlines every day, right? AI is coming for our jobs, especially in tech. But what if that's just the tip of the iceberg? What if the real story is what's happening just below the surface? Well, today we're diving in. We're going to look at a brand new map that shows the massive and largely hidden impact AI is having on the entire economy.
So let's just start with a big idea. What if the entire conversation we're having about AI's impact is, well, just plain wrong? And why would that be? It's pretty simple, actually. The maps we're using to navigate this new world, they're completely out of date.
Think about it. Our main tools for measuring the economy, things like the census, were designed for a physical world. They're great at tracking where factories are, where business addresses are, but work that's mediated by AI, that doesn't really have a physical anchor, does it? It's all happening on private digital platforms, totally invisible to our official statistics.
And that's the real problem, isn't it? How exactly do you put a human AI team on a census survey? How do you track the value being created on these private digital platforms? The short answer is you can't. And that means this whole new AI economy is just growing in a massive blind spot for us. But what if we could build a new map? Well, that's exactly what a team of researchers at MIT and Oak Ridge National Laboratory decided to do. They started something called Project Iceberg, with the goal of creating a completely new kind of map, one that's actually designed to see this invisible economy. And the core of their whole project is something called the Iceberg Index. Now, this is really important. It's not trying to predict job losses. It's not a crystal ball. Instead, what it does is measure the overlap between human skills and what AI can do. So, in other words, it shows us how much of our work, measured in actual wages, is technically exposed to automation.
And how they do it is just fascinating. It's a three-step process. First, they mapped out the skills of 151 million U.S. workers. I mean, the whole workforce. Then, they analyzed what over 13,000 different AI tools can actually do. And finally, they simulated billions, literally billions of interactions to see where those two worlds, human skills and AI capabilities, actually overlap.
Okay, so let's start with what we all think we know. The part of the story that makes all the headlines. Let's talk about the tip of the iceberg. The researchers call this the surface index, and it represents the slice of U.S. wages, mostly in those tech-heavy jobs, that are being visibly impacted by AI right now. And that number? It's just 2.2%.
So that 2.2% translates to about $211 billion. And this is the story we all know, right? It's the software developers, the data scientists, mostly in those coastal tech hubs. You can see it on the map here. It's really concentrated in just a few states. It's definitely real, but here's the kicker. It's only a tiny piece of the puzzle.
All right, but now let's go below the surface, because this is where the story gets really interesting. This is where we finally see what our old, outdated maps have been missing this whole time.
Yeah, this image really captures the whole idea. That visible text stuff we just talked about, that's just the tiny tip you see sticking out of the water. The real story, the massive part of the iceberg, is what's happening below. All the hidden automation of tasks in places like finance, HR, and customer support.
And once you factor in this huge, hidden mass, well, the number just explodes. We're not talking about 2.2% anymore. The full Iceberg Index shows that it's actually 11.7% of U.S. wages that are exposed.
And in dollar terms, we're not talking about $211 billion anymore. We're talking about a staggering $1.2 trillion in wage value.
So let that sink in. The hidden exposure is 5 times larger than what everybody's talking about. And it's not just in the tech hubs on the coasts anymore. It's everywhere. It's spread across the entire country. And frankly, in places that are probably going to surprise you. Okay, now check out this map. This is what's so wild about the geography here. When you look at the full iceberg, states like South Dakota and Delaware, places with really concentrated administrative and financial sectors, they actually show a higher technical exposure than a tech giant like California. I mean, who would have guessed that? So, okay, we've established the scale is massive. It's huge. But what does this actually mean for different parts of the country? This is where the index stops being just a measurement tool and becomes, well, a strategic map. This map here highlights what the researchers call the automation surprise. You see those states in red? Those are the places with the biggest gap between what they see on the surface, their visible tech exposure, and their huge hidden white-collar exposure. And just look where they are. Right in America's industrial heartland.
Let's just take Tennessee as an example to make this real. Its visible tech exposure? A tiny 1.3%. But when you look at all the administrative and service jobs that support its manufacturing industry, the hidden exposure shoots up to 11.6%. That's almost a tenfold increase. So think about it. While these states might be worried about robots on the factory floor, the bigger, more immediate risk might actually be for the folks in their offices.
And it's not just the amount of risk, it's the structure of that risk that really matters. For example, a state in the Northeast might have all its exposure concentrated in, say, the finance industry. That means they can have a really targeted, specific response. But a Midwestern state could have the exact same level of exposure, but it's spread out across a dozen sectors: logistics, manufacturing, services. That demands a way broader, much more coordinated strategy.
So, when you put all this data together, it points to one single, undeniable conclusion. The tools we've been using to see our economy, they're obsolete, they're broken.
And if you need one final piece of evidence, here it is. When the researchers compared the Iceberg Index toward traditional economic metrics, GDP, per capita income, unemployment rates, there's basically no correlation, like at all. Our old economic signals are completely blind to this new kind of skills-based risk.
I mean, this quote from the report just says it all, doesn't it? It says that our traditional indicators explain less than 5% of this variation. Relying on those old numbers to prepare for AI, it's like trying to navigate a hurricane using yesterday's weather forecast. It's just not going to work.
Now, I want to be really clear about this. The Iceberg Index is not a prophecy. It is not a crystal ball predicting who's going to get laid off. It's a capability map. The best analogy is an earthquake risk map. It doesn't tell you when the earthquake is going to hit, but it tells you exactly where you need to go and reinforce the foundations.
So ultimately, this research gives us a powerful new map, one that finally lets us see the true scale of the massive transformation that's ahead of us. It proves, without a doubt, that our old maps are blind. And so the really critical question we're left with is, now that we have this new way of seeing, what are we going to do about it?